I had an idea about Easter and Good Friday, but did not really know like what's happening in the week, right? So and some people they keep track of like what's happening during the week, and they have lots of things happening. Today actually this Sunday is the Palm Sunday. Okay, the Palm Sunday when Jesus entered into the city of Jerusalem, right? You remember the story of like when Jesus entered on a donkey, riding on a donkey, and people waved the branches of palms and they said, Hosanna to the King, right? Hosanna means save us, the King, save us, because then they were looking for a king for them to be delivered. Like they were looking for a Messiah to save them from actually politically from the Roman rules. And they were waiting for this time. And then they thought now Jesus had previously done this beautiful miracle, like he raised Lazarus from the dead, and people had heard about him. This Messiah is as he walks into the city. Can you believe like the commotion in the city, like this, like the vibe, the passion, the people just like just they're going crazy, and then they see this Messiah coming in, and they wave palm branches. Even some of the people like they lay their like the clothes on the street, and Jesus walks in, the King, right? A beautiful picture, like he did not come galloping on a horse, right? Like a warrior, a sword in his hand, like a king, usual king. But as the Isaiah portrayed, like he comes like a humble king riding on a donkey, a peaceful king. All right. So that's you can now imagine like what's happening at this at this point of time in Jerusalem right now, right? So many things happening right now, and people are just there gathered to see all these things unfold. Now this week. As this week unfolds and things go very fast, right? Very fast. What happens? Jesus then, Palm Sunday, after Jesus goes into the temple, he overturns the temple because then he sees like people are just selling and doing all kinds of business in the temple where they were not supposed to be doing. And he begins to overturn the temple. And because of that, now the Pharisees, those who are already like against him, now there is this peak, right? So it's really like hiking up. And then people wanting to see, like wanting to arrest Jesus and then put him to death, right? So that's what's been happening. And that's the climax there in the temple. And then on Thursday, what happens, the Monday, Thursday, we call it Monday, Thursday, right? Palm Sunday, Monday, Thursday, where Jesus spends time with his disciples, right? Washing their feet, spending time on a Passover meal with them. Right? And this is very significant because a lot of the gospel, like in 3 gospels or 4 gospels, it talks about this event, like where Mary comes and washes his feet, and then all that kind of things happen. Particularly, Jesus spends his Passover meal, like last meal, with his disciples. And after that, immediately after that, you can see, I'll come back to that. Then Jesus goes with his disciples. Let's go to the Mount of Olives. Now, Mount of Olives stands or stays here like and it comes a couple of times, like the gospel writers, they talk about Mount of Olives, where Jesus goes, and he talks about, if you look at Mark 13, chapter 13, we're going to read today Mark chapter 14, although today is the Palm Sunday, but we will be talking about prayer, right? In the context of prayer, the place called Gethsemane. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Gethsemane and the prayer. And then we will have a time of group discussions and praying for each other and praying for the needs that we have. All right. So basically, we're going to spend some time interceding for behalf of something or for someone. All right. So we'll be spending time a little bit like in prayers and intercession, because today we call it fasting, church fasting day as well. Particularly because we want to spend some time in praying. All right. So what happens? Right after this one, Mount of Olives has been multiple times the writer there talks about the Mount of Olives. Jesus is in the Mount of Olives talking about like his second coming, right? Second coming. And then in the same Mount of Olives, now the writer talks about Gethsemane. Like they gave this name Gethsemane. Now why they gave this name Gethsemane instead of saying Mount of Olives? All right. So that's just the picture. And then after the Monday, Thursday, Gethsemane prayer, what happens? You know what happens there, right? And Jesus is being arrested, all right? Jesus is being arrested and he's taken without the trial, actually, the process, because the Passover is just the next right? Sunday. It's coming there. So they wanted to immediately finish this case of Jesus Christ, and they put him to death on the cross. And that's where on Friday, actually, Jesus is put on the cross, and then he dies on the cross. And after 3 days, he rises again from the dead. He is resurrected. All right, and on Easter we celebrate his resurrection as a church. So that's the Holy Week. It's been many things happening just so quick, right? But then I believe that during this week many things can happen. Right? If you journey with Jesus, and particularly if we focus in what he says, then it's just like it really becomes powerful for us to really receive those words, and even for our lives, like not just to see it as a celebration or functions, but then something is happening right now. All right, so I'm gonna give this time to Sister Anita. She will help us read Mark chapter 14, verses 32, I think, to 40 or something like that. So we'll read this passage about Gethsemane, the prayer time of Jesus. And then let's just get into some of the things I want to share with you, and then maybe we'll spend some time in prayer. So easy.
The prayer in the garden. Then they came to a place which was named Gethsemane, and he said to his disciples, "Sit here while I pray." And he took Peter, James, and John with him, and began to be troubled and deeply distressed. He said to them, "My soul is exceedingly sorrowful, even to death. Stay here and watch." He went a little farther and fell on the ground and prayed that if it were possible, the hour might pass from him. And he said, "Abba, Father, all things are possible for you. Take this cup away from me. Nevertheless, not what I will, but what you will." Then he came and found them sleeping and said to Peter, "Simon, are you sleeping? Could you not watch 1 hour? Watch and pray, lest you enter into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak."
Right. Just bow our head, and I want us to pray right now, just for a while, just to receive God's revelation for us. Father, thank you for this time. God, we open our hearts to you, God. And even as we receive your word, God, I ask that, God, would you sanctify my lips and help me speak the words that you want to speak. And for those hearers, God, we pray that you would open our hearts, God, that we may be able to receive what you have for us. God, we just want to surrender to you this time. God, we ask that would you minister to our hearts, God, through your hands. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. Mark 14:32, a place of prayer, right? They went to a place called Gethsemane, and Jesus said to his disciples, as I was already telling you, like Jesus has a specific place. We can also say favorite place for prayer, right? He has this usual place, Mount of Olives, where he goes with his disciples and he spends time with his Abba Father, praying, interceding. Now, you can say that why does he need to pray? Like Jesus, as being the Son of God, right? But we can say even as being the Son of God, you can see in Jesus' life, like he's spending time with his Heavenly Father in prayers on his knees. And then I think finally at this point of time, the writers of the Gospels, they bring this this event, and they talk about this event of Jesus spending time in prayer in a very vivid manner, right? So we can really learn from Jesus, as being the Son of God, as being God himself. Why does he need to pray? But then he spends time. He's so intentional in his life, in investing his life for prayer life. Gethsemane is a very special is a special place, because Gethsemane is really, it means the oil press, right? The oil press, and I believe that it is no coincidence that the writers of the gospel, they talk about Gethsemane, is because now what Jesus would do to take upon himself the wrath of God, all right, to redeem the sins of humanity, as he would be tried, arrested, and he would go through this pain and horror of cross, and he would suffer for the people. Now he was, as being the human being, he himself, I think, as even as being the Son of God, that it was not possible. It was not easy for him. And then it's as if like he will be crushed, right? He will be crushed for our iniquities, and he will be like pressed like an olive to bring out that oil that is for healing, that is for soothing, that is for the oil that comes out of the olive. And you can see that Jesus has taken this place to show that he himself will be crushed for the iniquities of the human beings. And I believe that it's no coincidence that Jesus has been now, this episode of prayer this place has been taken or shown as the place of Gethsemane. So you can see that in Isaiah 53, we read that he will be crushed for our iniquities. And truly he will be crushed like the olive for our sins. And that's why the place is very important for us to know that Jesus has a place of prayer, and that this is what happens. This is what stands the Gethsemane for, even for when we actually talk about our own lives. The next one I wanted to show you is this. Jesus as human. Mark 14:33. He took Peter, James, and John along with him, and he began to be deeply distressed and troubled. My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death, he said to them. Stay here and keep watch. Now, when you look at this word distressed and troubled, it means, in the original language, it also means that he is lack of courage, or he's deeply troubled, he's fearful. You can really see that Jesus as being human in the most possible form. Like Jesus as being human, that he is not, of course, like he knows the outcome. He knows that he's going to die for humans. It is his mission. But then it is also his human body. It is also his human part that he's deeply distressed within in him, right? To go through these dark moments, dark period of life in his life. Now, what that really says to us. Imagine we always pray to Jesus, and we think about God as this powerful God, right? Always there to answer our prayers, or always there to solve our problems, like a mighty God, right? But for a second, just imagine this God who is so vulnerable, right? He limited himself to exercise his full power, right, against all these things, right? So he actually limits himself so that he can experience the pain and the horror, the suffering within in his own body, in his own life, right? So that he can experience the suffering, the pain that we also go through in our lives. So you can really see that Jesus as becoming human, as being the human in his and becoming vulnerable at his worst. You can see at this point of time. Who actually empatizes with you. And he says, my soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. He said to them, stay here and keep watch. And now this word will come again and again, that Jesus, being the Son of God, is asking now for his disciples to stay with him. Right in Matthew, you see he's asking his disciples, can you stay with me and pray with me, right? I'm going to come back to that at the end, but then what would it look like for us to stay with someone in the most difficult times? How do we stay with them? How do we comfort them? I think the most powerful thing that we can do is to stay with them in prayers, right? To journey with them in the dark moments of life, praying with them, interceding with them, right? So that could be the powerful thing that we can ever do for someone in their lives. The praying with them, agonizing with them, interceding on behalf of them. All right. Now, what happens that Jesus, as he was weak, you can see in his weakest point of life, he's vulnerable. Now, what he does, the way he goes, or what he does, is one thing that you will see that he is on his knees and praying, and then asking God to help him. Right? Why does he need to pray? Now, one of the things that there are a lot of things that we can share about the prayer, but then I took this the extract from Francis Chan's writing. He says that prayer is something like this. I once told my staff to let me know if they were not praying at least an hour a day. Now you can this way you will know the point of why he's saying this. Not because like you have to pray for hours and hours and like that. This is why I could replace them with someone who would. I would much rather hire someone who prayed and did nothing else than someone who worked tirelessly without praying. That may sound harsh, but prayer is that critical. Prayer is not merely a task of ministry. It is a gauze that exposes our heart's condition. It unveils our pride, showing us whether or not we believe we are powerless apart from God. When we pray, it is an expression of surrender to God and reliance on his infinite wisdom and sovereignty. And I do really believe that the prayer really exposes our heart's condition. It really exposes our heart's condition, right? Where we are at with God and how we are living our relationship with God. And really your dependency, your reliance on something, right? The more, the prayer is really that place like where you can really examine your heart and then really come to know yourself, like where you really rely on. Where is your source of power? Where is the source of your strength, right? And it exposes your sins and your temptation, like your vulnerability as well, right? And oftentimes what happens is that when we just pray the prayer of like the least prayer, like Lord, I need this and I need that, I think those prayers really just takes us away from the main focus of the prayer, because then prayer is not just like telling God like I need this and I need that, but then it's really that you examine your heart in the light of God's presence, and it has to expose your heart's condition before God and how you are doing in your spiritual life with him, how you are doing in your relationship with God and your relationship with other people as well. It has to expose you where you're at, and with that you can come to God. It is that critical in our lives. Now, as I talked about this, I'm going to go on to this next slide. Can you go to the next slide, please? In Mark 14, 35, 36, going a little bit further, he fell to the ground and prayed that if possible, the hour might pass from him. 36, Abba, Father, he said, everything is possible for you. Take this cup from me, yet not what I will, but what you will. Now, as I was talking about previously, like Jesus was on the Mount of Olives. He was, if you look at chapter 13, verse 26, it talks about Jesus coming in the clouds. At that, I'm reading from chapter 13, verse 26. At that time, people will see the Son of Man coming in clouds with great power and glory. Now, Jesus knew the second coming, right? He could even see it happening, right? So he was talking about him coming back again in great power and glory, right? But the temptation for Jesus is also that, he could get those glory and power without going through the suffering, without going through the Gethsemane, right? And I really believe that it is easier for him to be there, to have the victory without pain, to have the the resurrection without the suffering, right? But what happens, like Jesus, even though he feels that it is tough for him, it is difficult for him, he lays down his right, his will, in order to do the will of God, right? His desire is that, Father, it is possible. I know it is possible for you to for me to not to go through this suffering in my life, for me to not to go through this cross in my life. And you can actually bring that victory in my life, that the healing in my life without going through this suffering in my life, right? And many times in our prayers, that's what happens, right? We don't want to go through suffering. We want God to just to heal us. We want God to immediately like bring, the end of our suffering. The cross, we don't want to go through the cross, right? And we ask God to just to instantly, provide the victory that we've been longing for in our lives. And even when we have to stay in the cross, we have to go through the suffering. This week, we will be reminded of the suffering of the cross. Then many times, like we forget that God has actually willed this thing in our lives. And it becomes like, and we complain and we grumble. It becomes like difficult for us to understand God's provision in our lives, right? But then, and you can see that Jesus is praying this prayer like, Abba, Father, if it is your will, then take this cup, the wrath of God, right? The wrath that would be poured on him because of the sins of the humanity that he was carrying. He had to carry that wrath upon himself. That if it is possible, can I not go through this wrath? I cannot face you, Abba, Father. I've all along enjoyed you as my Father, loving Father, merciful Father. I'm not ready to go through this wrath in my life. What would it look like? Like if you have a relationship with your father or mother, you love them because they love you, right? You always want them to be happy and to look at you with smiles and with affirmations, right? Will you be able, or will you be like, will you desire to face their wrath, to see them angry all the time? Like my kids, like when we are not in peace, when we are like, our face is not like happy and cheerful, and then the Jaira actually, she says like, Amma, are you happy? And like she comes like, literally she comes like, can you smile? We don't want to face you guys like, getting angry. I don't want that side of you, of having that, carrying that wrath and anger and all of that. So now imagine like this same Heavenly Father, Jesus has spent his time with him. He knows him intimately, but now he knows what that wrath looks like that was going to come from his Heavenly Father. And I think perhaps it was because of these things that Jesus would pray to God, that God, if it's possible, can you take this wrath away from me? I don't have to go through this. Now, the last line really amazing. It's powerful the way he prays this prayer. Take this cup, it's on the same thing. Take this cup from me, yet not what I will, but what you will. And here lies the essence of Jesus' prayer, the powerful prayer that he prays. That he lays down his right. All right, he lays down his authority, his right to really like enjoy the goodwill of God, and now he lays his desire and will in favor of, in order for him to see the will of God in his life, and that's how he's praying at the Garden of Gethsemane. That is why the Gethsemane is a reminder for us that it is not a pleasant place to be. It's a reminder for us, a place that reminds us of temptations, darkness, and the wrath of God. And but when he faces this suffering, when he has to go through this suffering, what Jesus does, he's not avoiding it, but he's asking the will of God to happen in his life. Now, it's a big challenge for us, right, as Christians, to pray this kind of prayer in our lives. This prayer costs us. This prayer takes us to the places where we have never been before. And it is scary to be in those places. I know some people are like looking at me. I've experienced that, right? When you pray that, God, can you teach me? Then God teaches you. God, would you discipline me? And God disciplines you, right? God, may your will be done in this, God, not my will in my life. I had to pray those prayers several times in my life. When I had to go through the surgery, like my career malformation surgery, 7-hour surgery. And I really had to pray that prayer of like, Lord, now I'm so helpless that I would not know what happens next in my life. Besides trusting you and asking you that your will be done in my life. Your will be done in my life. And I prayed those prayers. God had to teach me to pray those prayers. and completely rely and depend on him, right? And depending on our own selves, my own energy. Now, God may ask you, God, we all have those moments, dark moments of life in our Christian journey when we go through those times of trial, temptations, and really carrying the cup of God's wrath in our lives because of many circumstances. Just so you know that our Lord Jesus Christ, he has gone through that. And he has prayed the prayer, Lord, may your will be done in my life, not my will. Many times our will becomes the obstacle in those kind of prayers, right? So for that, I want to go on to the next slide. Therefore, the obstacles to our prayers are Mark 14:27. Then he returned to his disciples and found them sleeping, right? Simon, he said to Peter, are you asleep? Couldn't you keep watch for 1 hour, right? Watch and pray so that you will not fall into temptations. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak.
Obstacles, but
The
obstacles.
sleeping, the word, next slide, kathedo, it means to sleep, to lie idle, right? And then metaphorically, it means to yield to sloth and sin and be indifferent towards salvation. It really talks about our physical condition. It really talks about our heart's condition as well, right? Our heart's condition affecting our physical condition. I mean, like plainly speaking, let's not talk deep things, but then how many of us we feel sleepy when we while we want to pray? I feel sleepy, like, and then how many times you hear God's voice saying, now this is the time to pray, and you feel sleepy. You want to sleep a little bit more.
Yes.
I'm guilty of that, right? And how many of you guys are so tired, and at that time, God says, can you pray? And then you like, okay, I'm so tired, I cannot pray, right? All right, so I have many excuses, right? Because on Mondays, it's my day off. And then I'm tired by the end of Sunday, right? At the weekend. And then on Monday, oftentimes God challenges me, asks me, can you spend time with me? And pray and be alert with me. And I think I really believe that this sleepiness, it talks about it is not just a physical condition because we have worked hard and tired now, I want to sleep. But it's really the condition of our heart that lying idle, right? So when God, like, there are seasons in our life, there are times in our life that we have to be alert and watch and pray, right? You can see that Jesus, at his most vulnerable time, what he is doing is like he's spending time in prayer, and he's asking his disciples, now the time has come for you to pray and watch and be more alert right now. It is the hour. It is the hour that you have to watch and pray. It is the time that you will be tempted even more heavily. Now you have to watch, you have to be alert, and you have to pray with me, right? Now I was reading just before this incident, what has happened. Now this incident, and then I was just thinking about maybe the disciples were so tired because then they were working the whole day, right? What do you see? What they were doing just before this incident? They were eating a Passover meal with Jesus Christ. They were having a really good time with Jesus, right? They were just spending this time with Jesus. And Jesus asked them, so now let's take it to a little bit further. Let's spend time in prayer. And I told you, like, this is not the first time. This has been the practice for them, right? They knew that they had to stay alert and pray. Now, many times we know that we have to be alert and watch and pray, but then there are things that takes us away from being alert, right? Jesus reminds us to be alert and not fall into the temptations and sin against God, right? I'm guilty of that many times. It is like our prayer is after we fall, and we pray, God, I'm so sorry, I failed again. God, I'm in a ditch. Can you please help me, God? God just said and tricked me again. God, would you help me? Like so, but then Jesus asked us to be alert and not fall into the temptations, right? You're tempted, you will be tempted, but then he has given us an antidote. He has given us the power to overcome those temptations in our lives.
That makes sense, like a
Prayer, and by being with him, by being alert with him. And I believe that there are seasons and times where he wants us to press in with prayer, press in and be alert, especially when we face a lot of the struggles in our lives, especially when we are going through spiritual battles in our lives. He wants us to be on our knees, right? He wants us to be on our knees and be more vulnerable. We feel more vulnerable in those times. He wants us to be on our knees and ask and spend time with him and press in and wage war against the devil, against the spiritual realities, right? The Ephesians says that our war is not against flesh and blood, right? Our war is against the spiritual realities, against the devil with his principalities, right? The dark forces of as a roaring lion, Satan is always constantly trying to take us down, trying to destroy our lives, right? Try to create that life that is not pleasing to God. So he's constantly at war. He's trying to destroy our lives. He's trying to kill and destroy and steal things from our lives. And how we stand here, how we come before God. By being watchful in prayer, we come before God on our knees. We intercede before him. I just want to give you this time just to think about something that is actually has become an obstacle in your life, in your prayer life right now.
Obstacle again?
Struggle or something that is keeping you, taking you out of your life. Now, we talked about sloth, right? Laziness is a sin in the Bible, right? But overworking is also can be an obstacle for us, right? On the other extreme. Like we work, where we never have time for rest, Sabbath, and spending time with God. So on one hand, we're lazy. On the other hand, we work to the point that we have no time. We have no specific place to go on our knees and to pray with the Lord. What could be something that is actually taking your time, or what could be two or one struggles that you see in your prayer life that has been keeping you from praying on your knees or being alert and watching with Jesus? All right, think about that right now, even as we get into the time of prayer and discussions. James, we will read this passage, James 5, 15, 16. And the prayer offered in faith will make the sick person well. The Lord will raise them up. If they have sinned, they will be forgiven. Therefore, confess your sins to each other and pray for each other so that you may be healed. The prayer of a righteous person is powerful and effective. I want to wrap up this time of message here. And my task was just to talk about the significance of the Gethsemane and why Jesus prays. And then the third is that for us, we need to spend time in prayer as Christians and recognize those obstacles that takes away our life of prayer. All right. And I want us to, in the group, like just get into the groups of 4 and talk about your what is keeping you, like the obstacles that is actually preventing you from spending or praying in your life. Just talk about those struggles with your friends. And like James, as we read the passage of James, if as possible, can you confess? You put I, sometimes we speak in a very vague manner, like, people have problems with a lot of work. That's why they don't spend. So we always speak like in they. So it becomes very vague, but it becomes very powerful if you speak like, I do this. I many times. So that will actually help us recognize our obstacles to the prayer. So you can share those, and then the rest we can actually pray for those obstacles that you're facing in your life. Just pray for each other. Just maybe like 22 or one just in prayers you can pray for each other. Okay. So let's get in the groups and do that. The last focus is that Jesus pray like, Lord, your will be done. It's really the prayer that takes us out of our own comfort zone to be praying for the other people or others outside of our own inward needs, right? So, and I think to learn this, to really, to mold or to develop our prayers to become other-centered is really that's where we were also discussing that's where we begin to see God's work in our lives and God's plan, like God's kingdom come, right? So, and that's what really expands us to grows our horizon, our relationship with God as well. Now, for an example, like why Jesus says like learn something or accept kids, learn something from kids, right? So it's not just because they're cute and innocent, like, but have you noticed like, how they pray, the kids? You got to be spending time with kids. Like when they pray, it's something very powerful and refreshing. I get to learn from my own kids, right? We have house devotions, and then we give them chance to pray on their own in light of like what we read. And Jaira really like these days, she prays this prayer of like, can you, God, please make me like my brother because he loves you so much. And then that prayer immediately jumps out to very like impossible prayers like, God, can you please take this temple away from our village? Because the temple is right there next to our house. And I'm like, you can't pray that prayer. It's like, it's never going to happen. For their minds, it's like God is the God who, ought to be worshipped, right? He's the true living God. And these temples, like, they are not the living gods. And I'm not like, what comes in their mind that they are praying this prayer? Let me share you. The prayer becomes very powerful when it is other-centered prayer. When we moved to Shatin, there is a hiking trails, and then just next to like our house, and then we saw there were a lot of the idols on the statues on top of the rocks as we were walking. And every time we walk, and we feel like this so sadness in our heart, like to see all these statues standing, and then so and so forth. Like, they had like Hare Krishna chanting as well. In some deep from the woods, the chanting would come like, ding, 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 ding. And it was like the nature, and then something was not really working. It's just not, we feel like so sad after coming from the walk. You were supposed to be feeling fresh, right? And then every time we would pass through this, and then we would ask our kids, hey, let's pray against these like idols. Let's pray. And we would pray a simple prayer. God, as we walk, we pray against these idols, that they are nothing. God, you are the living God. We proclaim you, and we bring you down in this place. 1 month later, I'm not kidding, all those idols were taken away from that place. It was uprooted. It was literally like they were cemented on the rocks, big rocks, but then they were just taken out, as if someone just came and then they were taken out, and all of those idols were gone after a month. And then it was like, wow, was that like very symbolic? It was so instant. It was so powerful. For us, we were like just enjoying this walk, but then we saw this like this immediate response of God. And I do not know what happened to the kids' heart. Then now, ever since they're praying for the temple to be taken away in the village, it's like God, you can do this. Now you can take the temple away from the village, which is odd. But then I want to share this to all of us. Like, there is this power in our prayers, and God really teaches us. Then we get to see God's work as we focus and we take our prayers to others, right? And that could be the reason why Jesus was wanting his disciples to pray with him, like Rajana was saying. And then he was praying this prayer, Lord, let not my will, but yours be done. But oftentimes our will is just centered around us and our own needs. But then God's will is big, and he can do miracles in our lives. He can do powerful things in our lives. Really, I think it could be simple as like, there's a pig problem in our village. Now the big pig problem has come, and they are just scattering the garbages. It was okay, just the pig coming and scattering this garbage, but then now they have collaborated with monkeys. Monkey and pigs just making this so worse. We can't even walk through. It's so scary. Monkey from the top and pig from the bottom. And I was like so upset with this problem. And then I was talking with the ladies. They had to come every morning and sweep the floor, take the trash and everything. And I felt for them, And I was like, kind of like complain, like, what's going on with this thing? And one day I just picked up a plank, big plank, and I chased the pig. But then the pig was like so angry with me, like, nobody reacts like that. Why are you? It's like, I was like, all right, I'm not gonna see you anymore. But then it just didn't stop. What happened was just the later was very funny. God just speaks to me like, pray for this problem. Pray for this problem. Yeah, pray for this problem. Barbecue them. No, we cannot barbecue. If we were in India, we would have barbecued already. So not here in Hong Kong. So So what happened then, God just shows me like the heart, for these ladies, right? And then I just start talking to them, and then it's been like very gloomy days, right? And the time when I make tea, I just think about them, and I feel like one day I'm just gonna carry some teas and then to them, just want to give them to them. And then I took some teas and I just made some teas and just gave it to them, saying, hey, thank you for doing this every day. I'm so sorry about this pig and monkey problem. So, and they were so happy, like they were so happy to see someone and then come to them and then with this gesture of like, somebody knows you guys, somebody recognizes your hard work. Really, that prayer took me out, and then I think it just like, it's my experience that I get to sense that there is something that God wants us to do, Thursday prayer, we pray, like we've been praying for a long time on online. We've been praying for the city and then the problems of the city. And then there was a time like we felt like, no, it's enough. We've been praying for a long time online. It's just enough. It had to be, we had to go out. We have to go out. So that prayer took us out on the street. And now on the last week of the month, right, the Thursday, we go out and share the gospel. Things are happening right now on the streets. Man, I mean, like there is something. This prayer, when we pray this prayer to God, I want to do your will. Then God takes us out of that place. The prayer becomes a reality in our lives. Right now, I encouraged you with those examples, but I know for sure that you guys been doing those things. You've been experiencing those things in your life as well, right? We shared about our own problems and shared about our own, like putting I struggle with these things. But now let's just like share in our groups, or maybe you can just write away prayer for a particular need in the city, or something that God is actually stirring in your heart that you need to pray for in Hong Kong or in our church. All right, what is it that God is actually stirring our hearts to pray for? You can pray for that particular need right now in your groups. Okay, so let's just spend some time praying and interceding on behalf of those needs right now, whatever it could be. Just share. I had a couple of people in place. They will share. They were supposed to be sharing the needs of our city, but then they got sick today. So maybe the sickness could be one thing that we can pray for right now. Okay, all right, so let's just go in and spend some time in prayer, intercession.